This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, have you got yourself your PR podcast plug yet? You know, we've had some people mail in, what is this, like 1870? Send in, let's put it that way, send in some PR podcast plugs, and we are grateful for those. But we want to hear more. We want to hear what our community out there is doing in our spare time, if we have any spare time. Your passion project, your newsletter, your TikTok channel, your cool recipe that you got from grandma or something like that. Send us something that you are passionate about so we can plug you at the top of an upcoming show. Send it along to either one of the PR Podcast social channels, or send it to me directly by email at jody@jodyfisherpr.com. Let us give you a PR podcast plug in an upcoming episode. Now let's get right into our conversation with our guest for today. Claire Mason is a thought leadership publicist who works with founders, coaches, and solo entrepreneurs to help earn the publicity they need to grow visibility, credibility, and opportunity pipelines using her proven LinkedIn and media strategies. Claire's landed clients' stories in Forbes, CNBC, and the Wall Street Journal, and has earned her own bylines in The Guardian, Marie Claire, and the Sunday Times. Her work has been showcased as an example of best practice by HubSpot, and she's a regular contributor to the Business to Community USA, Digital Donut in the UK, Thrive Global, and Co-Founders Town in India, where she writes on how content marketing can move the needle for B2B brands. Sounds like we have a lot to talk about. Claire Mason, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Thank you very much, Jody. I'm thrilled to be here.
And thank you for joining us. Now, where do we find you in the world today?
I'm in Dublin, Ireland, but the accent is straight out of Johannesburg, South Africa.
Wow. Okay. So you are a traveler of the world, and I guess you work on a global stage a little bit, right? Tell us how you sort of found that identity for yourself working across nations and across time zones.
Well, I really have Ireland to thank for that, actually, because it's a great little country, and that's how it identifies itself as well. So I've been in this neck of the woods for a very long time, but because you're really talking about a city, Dublin itself, of about 1 million people, you go beyond the borders when you set up your own business in Ireland very quickly. And of course, East Coast USA is not far away. With the internet, I've got great access to West Coast USA. I've been working with founders of startups and scale-ups here in Ireland for a long time. And again, from an economies of scale point of view, they're looking outside the borders of Ireland quickly. So it was always a case of, from a media perspective, working with international media to plant and land their stories in those big titles that exist outside of Ireland. So it's really Ireland that gave me an international career.
That's really interesting to hear. I know that, at least for myself, I work geographically predominantly in the New York area. I have clients around the country, around the United States, and I've worked in different local markets around the United States. And a teeny tiny bit internationally, but certainly not to the degree that you have. What are some of the maybe opportunities, and what are some of the challenges working across media located in different countries and even in different cultures?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind from a challenging point of view is time zones, because I work predominantly with US, UK, and Irish media, but I have occasionally worked with English-speaking media in Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, and even my native South Africa. So from a time zone point of view, that's just very operational, but it can be part of the problem when you have a founder interview taking place at 3:00 in the morning, for example, because they're being interviewed out of Sydney or whatever the case might be. There is quite a difference from a cultural point of view. I know, for example, I can often pitch journalists through a tweet, a private DM on their Twitter account. and a US journalist will give me a quick yes or no very quickly, and if it's a yes, obviously then I send a longer email, and at that point I'm no longer a cold contact. I tried that with journalists here in Ireland, and I practically got myself blackballed. Really, it's just culturally, it's just not acceptable here. It's seen as a little bit too forward. So you learn those nuances as well, and you learn them through making a few boo-boos. But that's just one example that comes to mind. I find the US media a lot more open to being approached through various platforms, whereas in Ireland and the UK, it's very much done through the email channel.
Very interesting. And how do you keep track of, what's going on in the different countries, or, I guess you're dealing a lot with beat writers. I'm making an assumption here. Across different countries, you're keeping track of different countries, different cultures, what's going on locally there that maybe get inside the head of the reporters who you're pitching. How do you manage to keep all that in line?
Well, I think if you're drawn to a career in the field that we're in, Jody, then by nature you probably are a bit of a news hound. And I counteract that with having a very full analog life so that I don't lose myself. I love gardening, I love dancing, those kinds of things. So from a mental health work-life balance, that's how I keep sane. But yeah, I definitely am somebody who would follow news feeds. And of course, Twitter has been in the news recently, maybe not always for the most flattering reasons, but it is still very useful from that point of view. I rely on what is now looking like old technology, but things like Google Alerts, that's very helpful. So the moment I sign a new client and I've taken them through my onboarding process and I've extracted main messages and things like that and bigger themes, then I make sure that I set Google Alerts up for that. And then, the databases that we use often have very helpful search functions. So that becomes another tool to use. And then I also, the clients that I represent in the tech space or, professional services, sorry, those are also fields that I naturally feel some kind of affiliation for. So I'm in those networks really, and that's how I stay current. And then of course there's good old research, isn't there, which is a lot of what you and I are doing on a daily basis anyway. You've got to educate yourself on what you're speaking about.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just chimed in on a thread the other day, talking about, what PR advice for young people. And the thing that I'm always telling young people is you've got to consume the news that you want to be a part of. If you want to get your client in the fill in the blank, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, whatever, you've got to read those papers. You've got to understand how they report, who the players are, what they cover, why they cover it, and really get a feel. I would say you have to probably consume any publication for a good 3 to 6 months before you can effectively pitch them, depending on how frequently they come out and all that jazz. But it's interesting how people just kind of think they can cold email a reporter without really understanding them, and serving the needs of the reporter is such a key piece of what we do.
If you do that, actually, then it doesn't become very difficult. It becomes very easy to open media doors. And I think that's too on my LinkedIn profile, or my LinkedIn newsfeed, I share a lot of, I really feel that I have a mission to demystify what publicity can do and how to access publicity. And if you really treat it, if you treat the media with respect and you actually treat your own stories with respect, in the sense that you're not looking for that shortcut hack, you actually are looking for, the exactly as you say, consume the media, really spend time building the relationship with the journalist, then it becomes, the media door becomes an easy door to push open.
Yeah, so true, so true. Speaking of patience, having patience and building those relationships, let's talk about something that you've built your business around: visibility as a growth strategy. I think we fight this battle every day with our clients, at least some of them, about ROI. And they want to draw a straight line from, the media hit to their cash register. And I think collectively we all push back and we go, no, that's not what this is about. Talk a little bit about your approach with clients and your philosophy about visibility as a growth strategy to actually build a business.
Yeah, so this is something that keeps me awake at night, Judy, because I feel like we say, in Ireland, certainly people will always talk about how people buy from people, or, it's the know, like, and trust factor in business. And I don't think that either one of those statements is untrue, but we actually need to be thinking a lot deeper about what we're saying. So from a know, like, and trust factor point of view, all of that is true. But before anyone can know, like, or trust you, they actually need to see you. And as we know, they need to see you more than once, and they need to start building an understanding of who you are, what you stand for, what your company stands for, how you can help them solve a problem, etc. And then the other statement that we parrot frequently is people buy from people, and even more so now with the exponential leap AI took this year with ChatGPT and all the rest, and we know that's only going to speed up. So people buy from people, which means, yes, you need to be communicating in a people orientated way. Harvard Business Review, I think it was late 2021 or early 2022, published an article with a very bold statement as a heading saying B2B sales and marketing has become obsolete. Quite frankly, I don't agree with the statement, and I feel even the article sort of argued against that statement. But what it is saying is people are no longer willing to just access information about you on your website or jump into some kind of sales funnel that you've set up. They want to access that information on the internet in the places that they hang out in. And of course, the media is still a very, very big part of that. We can turn our nose up at the mainstream media, but The Economist themselves published an article, this is probably early part of last year, about how trust in the media is actually growing. So that sounds counterintuitive, but actually people turn to the media to curate information for them. Even you and I as PR professionals, Jodie, we don't wake up in the morning and read the internet. We go to certain platforms and publishers to curate that information for us. And then secondly, so going back to the Harvard Business Review article, is people want to access information where they are. They don't want to jump onto your website. Of course, your website is critical. I'm not arguing against having a website, but I am saying you need to have a presence on the internet in far more places, or in print publications, podcasts, any kind of publisher, far beyond your own earned media footprint. And from a visibility point of view, the more visible you make yourself, I always argue that establishing yourself as a thought leader is actually an act of service. There definitely is a win for yourself in terms of winning more business, maybe speaking opportunities, you get to write your book, all the rest, but you're also really putting a spotlight above your head to help people find you, people who have a problem that you can help them solve. So when you approach publicity from a point of view that you're serving your audience as well as serving yourself, it becomes a very different, let's say, frame to the idea that being a thought leader or building a personal brand is purely self-interest. It's actually a give and take.
It's so true. And I'm guilty of explaining to clients how when we're dealing with media, or where we're sending pitches or story ideas to media, and then working with the reporters in the back and forth, that I have, as the publicist, just as much interest in helping the reporter as I do helping the client, because they need to tell the story we want them to tell to the audience that we want to reach. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to think about the audience that you're reaching through the media outlet to, that you're not just working with an individual reporter. You're actually broadcasting to their audience that comes to them for information. So jumping off your ideas about personal brands, do we need more thought leaders in the world? That seems to be the most overused term at this point. I know it's been around for almost a decade, I guess, but everybody seems to want to be a thought leader. Do we need more thought leaders, or how do you go about meshing thought leader and personal brand?
Well, I'm going to answer that. Obviously, as a thought leadership publicist, I'm going to declare my bias right at the beginning, to say, yes, I'm going to argue that we do need more thought leaders. I always believe that I feel that there's a huge responsibility to up the tone of the content that is available out there. So when and again, this goes back to my argument that establishing yourself as a thought leader is actually an act of service. It's all well and good for us to turn up our noses at the shoddy content that we might see in the public space, but then what are you doing to actually educate people about your field or the point of view you might hold on your industry or whatever the case might be? So I would say, yes, we do need more thought leaders. Of course, thought leadership is not confined to the platform of LinkedIn exclusively, but from a LinkedIn point of view, there are some statistics available, which LinkedIn has shared themselves. As recently as it would be October 2022, LinkedIn went public about the fact that they've got 875 million people on their platform, and only 1% of 875 million people are actually publishing posts at least once a week. Now, I'm not making an argument about whether those are high quality posts, poor quality posts, or somewhere in the middle, but I'm saying that, we think that all anybody's doing is publishing content all the time, and actually it's a very small proportion of people, which again makes the argument that we need more people contributing to the conversations that we see in the public domain. So yes, I'm going to say we do need more thought leaders. And then in terms of how do I mesh the two together, I don't think there's a world of difference between the term personal brand and thought leadership. I think what brings those two terms together is really your authority. And when you're creating a thought leadership footprint or a personal brand for yourself that comes from a place of quality and sharing information that can really help another person who has a problem to solve, then what we're doing is building trust. And ChatGPT or no ChatGPT, trust is still the currency on which business is done. So yeah, I would be a big believer in establishing yourself as a thought leader.
Love that. And so how do you go about then, going back to our conversation about ROI, how do you measure the value of the personal brand of the thought leadership? You have said that vanity metrics are actually gold, and there's a thought out there that vanity metrics are simply that, vanity, how many clicks and how many views and things like that. Why do you think that vanity metrics are actually gold?
Yeah, well, my background, Jody, before I became a self-employed publicist, was very much in the lead generation world of digital companies. And I remember if you went into a marketing meeting and you shared the latest updates on vanity metrics for however your content was performing, I mean, you really sort of marked yourself out as an amateur who didn't know how digital marketing really worked. And I always felt like we were missing a trick because, again, before anybody can start engaging with your content, maybe clicking a little like button or, sharing an email address to download an ebook or whatever the case might be, they have to have seen that content in the first place. So for us to be dismissing vanity metrics is really to be dismissing the very early part of the funnel, which is where everybody begins. Any prospect, lead, or somebody who ultimately becomes a client for you, they've all started in the vanity metrics pool. And you can always measure how your messages are landing from a vanity metrics point of view. You're not going to measure that in terms of the engagement metrics or conversion metrics, because that's happening much later in the funnel. And then how do I equate or how do I draw the line between visibility and ROI? Firstly, how your visibility assets are really aiding with your conversion. So when you've got your publicity machine, let's say running, and I always say too, publicity is not a short-term game. You're looking at medium-term to long-term commitments. And I often turn clients away who come to me, very eager to work together, but think that they're going to land one piece of media coverage and suddenly, the world of revenue is going to open up for them. And I have to be the bearer of bad news on that. But when you've got your publicity engine running, you should be seeing things like shorter sales cycles. You should have a whole content flywheel that's working for you, because one piece of media coverage can easily be turned into another 15 to 25 pieces of content. So it makes that part of your marketing much easier. And then from a conversion point of view, that should be much, much easier because you've got trust built into your whole sales journey, let's say, or customer journey.
So true. I'm with you on the short-term project philosophy.
Yeah, it's
That didn't come out very clearly, but the idea of, someone coming in and think they're gonna work with you for a month or two or even three and just completely transform their business through earned media and public relations simply isn't reality. I just did a recent post about how we all need to have patience, and we need to communicate patience to clients in order to manage their expectation. That, sometimes you'll pitch a story and the story won't even come to fruition for 3 months. It's not unlike a president who puts a great economic policy in place and turns the economy around, but they get voted out before you see the results of it, and the next person takes credit for it.
Yeah. Yeah,
You've used the phrase, you have used the phrase publicity skyrocket. Tell me what a publicity skyrocket is and how do you do it?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because it's really one of the secrets that I feel more people should know about. So I love landing what I call tier one media opportunities for clients. Okay, those are the let's say the media logos we all understand: Business Insider, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, all the rest. I feel like a hero. The client's very happy. It's a good day's work. But often where you do find, very much from a lead point of view, as well as your kind of first foothold into getting into the media, is in Europe. I don't know if maybe this is the same in the US, Jody, but we call it trade media. Maybe you'd also call it niche media. So let's say, for example, you're an accountant. Maybe it is landing an article in accountantsmonthly.com, for example. And then from that point of view, what I can do is I can then take that logo, and then what I could do is, I could take that link, and then maybe what I can do is pitch to a journalist who is writing for a much more mainstream, let's say, generalist media outlet, but of course, it's got a bigger audience, or whatever the case might be. And then, of course, from that point of view, the sky's the limit. We can be pitching the fast companies of the world, or whatever the case might be. So that's often one of my secrets of how I land clients in the really big, well-known media publishers, is to really start off with publishers that are very much in their own niche. And then I've had it before where I worked with a company here in Ireland that had a very specific software solution that was for large scale, like really your bank, your big Fortune 500 banks and insurance companies of the world. And in the same week, we had an article go out on CNBC, and we had an article go out on a banking website that was actually even behind a paywall. To get to the article, you had to be paying, I think, something like $60 a year subscription. And I remember we did have it sort of tied in with the Salesforce sort of setup in the background and all the rest. So it was a much closer, let's say, ability to track how the PR was performing from a lead generation. There was a book to download and all the rest. And CNBC was wonderful. It was great to land the article. But we got something like 6 prospects download the book. And then in terms of this banking website that you had to get behind the paywall to get the article, we had something like 60 prospects download the ebook. So again, you're often speaking to a much smaller audience, but it's often a much more targeted audience if you begin with trade or niche media. And that's what I mean by publicity skyrocket. Start a lot smaller, but then you can propel yourself into the big leagues very quickly.
I am with you on that one. I have described a similar philosophy in different words to clients all the time. And I'll say that it's a light bulb that goes off when you see it. And others sit there and go, yeah, but I really want to be in the New York Times.
Yeah.
So it's a project to work on. Speaking of the New York Times and speaking of our industry, let's talk about newspapers, physical hard copy newspapers. I am a fan, even though I also love my digital versions of all my magazines and things like that. But from where you are, sort of on a global stage too, working in all the different countries you work in, are people still reading newspapers?
They are, they are. I've got a brilliant stat that I love sharing about the UK. So I don't know if you get Mars bars in the USA. It's a chocolate, and it in the UK, this was a statistic shared by the Evening Standard, which is a London paper,
Yep.
and so 200 million Mars bars get sold in the UK every year. 1 billion newspapers get sold in the UK every year. So, you know, we know the advertising has had a bite taken out of it and all the rest, but do not write newspapers off. They are still very much a force to be reckoned with. And another thing that we see happening is I'm also very digitally orientated. And I think for any of us to argue against the convenience of what it is to being able to access, you know, a newspaper, you pay your subscription and all the rest, and you get that information, I think is foolish. But when we buy a print newspaper, we're not dealing with ads and pop-ups and all the rest. So I really feel that the media is starting to find its feet again, and we are being very foolish if we write print off. It's got a very bright future, I believe, not without, you know, some figuring out of how it's going to position itself. City AM, a big a weekly morning newspaper in the UK, is just being sold at the moment, and there's some big plans coming about how they are turning a profit. I mean, a newspaper turning a profit. So, you know, we write them off at our peril. There's still a lot of life in the old dog yet.
I'm very glad to hear that. I have to tell you, I am a little bit of an old soul as well as being an old person. But I shout out to my local newspaper here on Long Island, Newsday, which I have a subscription, but it's a digital subscription. And the reason it's only a digital subscription is because I can still go on their app and I can read a PDF version of their newspaper. I can still scroll through the newspaper and read it like a physical print copy of the newspaper, because I want to read it that way. I don't want to click around. I don't get, especially as a PR person, you know, you can appreciate this. What's on the front page? What's in each particular section? How does the paper get set up? Because as communicators and as PR people, we have to understand who's writing in what section, who's doing what job, where are the priorities in terms of what stories get bigger coverage versus small. You don't get that in a web story. You can see one's longer than the other, but what's on page 2? What's on page 15? What's all the way in the back of the paper that's not the sports section? You get the idea. Love to hear that perspective on print, and yay, we want our print publications to survive, because we need to be cheerleaders of journalism, because if journalism isn't around, we ain't around.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Well, Claire, this has been a wonderful conversation. We are going to segue now into the rapid fire question portion of our podcast, which is where we steal a page from inside the Actors Studio, ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit a simple answer, a chuckle if you've got one, and I'm sure you do. With your indulgence, here we go, all the way from Dublin, Ireland. Claire Mason, what is your favorite news source?
I would be very, I really like Business Insider.
Good one. Good publication. Rapid fire question number 2. What's your favorite social media platform?
So I'm boring about this, but I am a LinkedIn fangirl. Through all the algorithm changes, I do like the platform.
Tell me how you use LinkedIn, because that's the one platform that I think everybody uses in a slightly different way, a very personal way. How do you use LinkedIn?
So I use LinkedIn at least every month. I make sure I've got 20 organic posts going out, which means, you know, posts in my own newsfeed. But what I do far more of, Jody, is I comment under other people's posts. And I'm not meaning, wow, great stuff, congratulations comments. I mean comments where I'm really, you know, they can be a paragraph or 2 paragraphs long at times. I don't say I do that on a daily basis because, you know, life intervenes, but I certainly pay a lot of attention to my commenting strategy, and I have made many connections with the media that way, actually, because the media is all over LinkedIn as much as they might be on Twitter.
Yeah. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Rapid fire question number 3, coffee or alcohol?
Neither. I don't drink coffee or alcohol, but I will say to you, I am a tea fanatic. So in any given day, 6 or 7 cups of tea is not unusual.
It doesn't sound unusual at all. Rapid fire question number 4. What is your favorite on the run food?
Okay, I'm going to sound virtuous. I love green peppers, so I chop those up. But then I will also say to you, I go bananas for a bag of salt and vinegar crisps. So little angel on my shoulders with the green pepper, little devil on my shoulders with the crisps.
Wow, love that. Love that. Rapid fire question number 5. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
A tango dancer.
I'm sorry, I missed that. A what?
A tango dancer.
Oh, wow. Okay. Do you like to dance?
Yes, I do. And I do the tango a lot, but I quite fancy that as a career one day in the future. So maybe it's my next life, Jody. I'll be a professional tango dancer.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. I love that. Well, Claire, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
Oh, thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation for me too. So my website is www.clairemason.co. That's .co, not .com. And then I'm on LinkedIn, and you can find me if you enter into the search bar, Claire Mason Thought Leadership. If you just enter Claire Mason, hundreds come up. But if you enter Claire Mason Thought Leadership, I'm the only one that comes up.
We will look you up there, Claire. Thank you again. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.